grabbed me as urgent were issues related to population.
In 1998, Dr. Zabin became the founding director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Institute for Population Control. Dr. Zabin became the founding director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Institute for Population Control.
We see a lot of things that are going very well, things like reducing childhood death and First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
The problem is that the population is growing the fastest where people are less able to deal with it. So it's in the very poorest places that you're going to have a tripling in population by 2050. And so their ability to feed, educate, provide jobs, stability, protect the environment in those locations mean they're faced with an almost impossible problem. Here we can see a chart that looks at the total world population over the last several hundred years. And at first glance, this is a bit scary. We go from less than 1 billion in 1800, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.4 billion where we are today is happening even faster. So Melinda and I wondered whether providing new medicines and keeping children alive, would that create more of a population problem?
And what the developing world does not need is more children.
And I think that was the biggest aha to Bill and me when we got into this work, is we asked ourselves, of course, the same hard-nosed question you'd ask, which is, if you get into this work and you start to save these children, will women just keep overpopulating the world? And thank goodness the converse is absolutely true.
This is a very important question to get right, because it was absolutely key for me. When our foundation first started up, it was focused on reproductive health. That was the main thing we did, because I thought, population growth in poor countries is the biggest problem they face. You've got to help mothers who want to limit family size have the tools and education to do that. And I thought that's the only thing that really counts. Is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion.
But that's called the death panel. And you're not supposed to have that discussion.
Behind closed doors on this New York campus, a secret gathering of some of the world's most powerful people. Gates, Buffett, Bloomberg, Winfrey. It was like the Super Friends. Together with others at the meeting, including George Soros, Ted Turner, David Rockefeller, they're worth more than $125 billion.
That much money, that much power around one table. It begs the question, what were they doing? What were they scheming? Total world domination?
This group, together for 6 hours, was talking about charity, education, emergency relief, global health, the new Superman and Wonder Woman, the super rich friends, not fighting bad guys, but fighting for good nonetheless.
Apparently, one of the things they discussed was what each of them knows about what really works and what doesn't work, so they can concentrate their resources.
An epidemic, either naturally caused or intentionally caused, is the most likely thing to cause, say, 10 million excess deaths. Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look.
Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero.
Now, malaria is, of course, transmitted by mosquitoes. I brought some here. so you could experience this. We'll let those roam around the auditorium a little bit. There's no reason only poor people should have the experience.
But did you come to reproductive issues as an intellectual?
When I was growing up, my parents were always involved in various volunteer things. My dad was head of Planned Parenthood, and it was very controversial to be involved with that.
My dad was head of Planned Parenthood.
The ultimate solution, the only thing that really lets us go back completely to normal and feel good about sitting in a stadium with lots of other people, is to create a vaccine and not just take care of our country, but take that vaccine out to the global population.
Take that vaccine out to the global population.
We clearly need a vaccine that works in the upper age range because they're most at risk of that. And doing that so that you amp it up so it works in older people and yet you don't have side effects. You know, if we have, 1 in 10,000 side effects, that's, way more, 700,000, people who will suffer from that.
Way more, 700,000 people who will suffer from that.
The side effects for the Moderna vaccine sound concerning. We looked. After the second dose, at least 80% of participants experienced a systemic side effect, ranging from severe chills to fevers. So, are these vaccines safe?
Well, the FDA, not being pressured, will look hard at that. The FDA is the gold standard of regulators, and their current guidance on this, if they stick with that, is very, very appropriate. And the side effects were not super severe. That is, it didn't cause permanent health problems for the things there. Moderna did have to go with a fairly high dose, and so to get the antibodies. Some of the other vaccines are able to go with lower doses to get responses that are pretty high, including the J&J and the Pfizer. And so there's a lot of characteristics of these vaccines. It's great that we have multiple of them that are
Bill,
going out there. And yes, I think
you know the data
US
better than I do.
government.
But the Bill, the data showed that everybody with a high dose had a side effect.
Yeah, but some of that is not dramatic, where it's just super painful. But yes, we need to make sure there's not severe side effects. The FDA, I think, will do a good job of that, despite the pressure. But you don't have a choice. People act like you have a choice. People don't feel like going to the stadium when they might get infected.
But you don't have a choice. People act like you have a choice.
What else are we not listening to that we need to take action on now?
Well, the idea of a bioterrorist attack is kind of the nightmare scenario, because they're a pathogen with a high death rate would be picked. Now, the good news is, I'm not trying to depress you, it's tough enough right now, that most of the work we're going to do to be ready for pandemic 2, I call this pandemic 1, most of the work we'll do to be ready for that are also the things we need to do to minimize the threat of bioterrorism.
The economy is not going to be anything like it was. It's going to take a long time to recover. It's going to be, people are going to be surprised at how slow and how fitful this is.
It's just going to take a long time to recover. It's going to be, people are going to be surprised at how slow and how fitful this is.
When I tell you to supplement your natural diet so you'll be healthier and fund the M4 at the same time, I'm not lecturing you. I eat too much red meat, I drink too much, I work too much, I have my own issues with stress. But I can tell you, without winter sun, without vitamin mineral fusion, without lung cleanse, all three of which I take every day, I would not be able to continue in what I do. These are amazing products, and if you don't have the essential vitamins and minerals, you're not going to be able to function. In fact, you're going to die. That's why people starve for lack of food. These products have it all concentrated in one place for you to make sure that every essential vitamin mineral you need, you get. The D3, the K, in Winter Sun, and all of them together with amino acids in Vitamin Mineral Fusion, and then Lung Cleanse. Research it for yourself. It's amazing. They're all 50% off together, 40% off individually at InfoWarsStore.com. Back in stock for a limited time, and it funds the InfoWar.
Pandemic completely changed our world. From your perspective, where are we right now in the fight against COVID?
Well, I think we still have a ways to go. You know, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel here in the United States, but until all Americans are vaccinated, we still have a ways to go. But, you know, it's going to be a while until the entire world is vaccinated. So this is going to still be with us the next few years. And I think we're going to have to really watch these variants that'll be bouncing around the world. That's actually still quite concerning. Well, because every time we know viruses mutate, but when they mutate, you know, they can become sometimes more deadly or more contagious. And so anytime you see these mutations, we need to be on top of them in terms of surveillance. And then we're going to have to figure out, do we need to tune various vaccines to take care of them? But economically, we're not going to have as swift a recovery in the United States or in Europe if we don't make sure that everybody gets vaccinated.
New Zealand, Australia, you know, they took their experience and actually prepared, and so they moved a lot faster. So we, you know, we'll have to prepare for the next one. That, you know, I'd say is will get attention this time. So we, you know, we'll have to prepare for the next one. That, you know, I'd say is will get attention this time. That, you know, I'd say is will get attention this time. That, you know, I'd say is will get attention this time.
Aplaudați-o, doamna Renate Weber! Ieșiți acum! Doamna Renate Weber, pentru dumneavoastră și vă mulțumim din tot sufletul. Ne pare rău pentru tot ceea ce s-a întâmplat, îmi pare rău că n-am putut să vă